Good to go? Okay. Let's call this meeting to order. The Town of North Stonington Board of Selectmen meeting for December 14th, 2021, 6 p.m. Roll call is myself, First Selectman Bob Carlson. Also with me are Selectman Brett Mastriani and Selectwoman Nicole Porter. We'll start with a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move along. Any comment by either of the two selectmen?
I just want to say that I don't know what kind of communication we've had already, but good friends of mine, Alan and Tanya Sylvester, just renovated a building in Pawcatuck. And I went to the open house earlier at 4:30. It's absolutely amazing. It's run by an organization called New Heights. And what they do is offer adults 18 and over with disabilities day programs, life skills, education. They even have an apartment up top above the building that the participants can practice entertaining, buying their own groceries. It's amazing. So I just wanted to make sure that we somehow are tied in and that our residents know that it exists, it's open. And I have the program director's name. If a family member wanted to reach out or a participant wanted to reach out, you would literally just contact this person and they would walk you through the entire process of participating. It's an absolutely amazing space.
So this is open up to more than just Stonington. It's not Stonington.
Absolutely.
How-
Absolutely.
So how do we publicize that through our town? How do we let our townspeople know that's
And
available?
that's why I wanted to bring it up here, because they are aware of certain young adults in the surrounding area, and they actually reached out and invited particular families. So I think that they are aware of people and they're reaching out, but that's what I want to know is how we can get the information out to North Stonington residents that this exists and what they offer. The school system takes care of, and Amy can speak to this, better than I. The school system, it's my understanding, takes care of and works with children all the way through 18, but there's also some programs past 18 to 21. Yep. Exactly. So that's where this program and this organization picks up. And they have everything from art classes to social engagements to life skills learning, and all the way up to this apartment where the participants can, practice entertaining, having people over, social engagements. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing what they're doing. Yep. It's absolutely amazing.
So why couldn't we, through the school system?
I
with
was just
Sue
going to say,
Costa, I mean, she has the majority of the children that don't go out of town.
Yep.
She knows when they graduate, even if they're not eligible yet because they're still being taken care of. Maybe they are. Did you say from 18 on?
it is 18 on, but as Amy said, the school system you can be in the school system until 21. But I think the school system is a perfect place to start in making sure that they have this information.
Because at least they can identify who the
Yep, absolutely.
people are. So upon graduation, that might be the next step.
Yep.
Maybe they could even attend an open house at school
So is this something that we would bring to the Board of Ed? Is this something we would just bring to Peter to make sure that they have this information? It exists, see if somebody from the school can reach out to this organization and just get the information they need to pass on to families when the time
So
comes.
we have a Board of Ed member here tonight.
Yeah. I'm
So
looking
why
at
don't we ask Steph if she can at least get the information to Christine Wagner? If she's any additional help, either through you or Amy, we can get her some additional help. And then,
Yeah,
right, so I think, don't you think that Sue knows, she's been there for so long, she must know like the last 10 years of graduates, that, wouldn't you think? She would know who's graduated the last 5 to 10 years, maybe we produce those names and we can approach those people to say this is out.
yeah.
Can we ask Nita if there's room in the quarterly for just a small bit of information about it so that it would go to all the residents of
Mhm.
town?
That would be great. That would be great.
Yep, that'd be great, I can do that.
Can we put it on our website as well? Or is it because it's a do we have to be careful?
No, we
What
can
we
put
do.
it on the website. It's just not necessarily someplace that I think people would think
Would
to
go
look.
to look.
Right.
But since the quarterly gets mailed to everyone's home, at least that would get to all the people.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
great
great.
idea. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Nicole. Brett, you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to report. So I went to the sector's annual meeting a few weeks ago. And it was interesting. So they're going to start working on their SEDS, which is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. Almost like our POCD, but slightly different on a bigger scale. And one of the things that was interesting, they had the consultant that they're using, they're giving a presentation, and they talked about how much money is out there now for all kinds of things for municipalities, more money than there's ever been out there. But the one thing that he said that was important is to make sure we line up our programs. So with federal dollars, you can't dip into different pools for the same project, but you can dip into smaller projects that go into a bigger picture. So they brought about the transportation and infrastructure bill, that's all that money that's coming down the line. And they said you can use some of your ARPA funds to be prepared, because for that program, you have to be shovel ready. So what you do is you do your studies with some of the ARPA funding or some of the other grants out there, and then you use another federal grant for the next stage, and then you're at shovel ready. So when the transportation and infrastructure money comes, you're ready to go, because that's how they're going to be awarding it. So there's ways to have a whole initiative paid for under separate little programs. And it's just lining those up and knowing where you want to be and be shovel ready for those projects. I thought that was really interesting part of it. I ended up talking to Sam Eisenbeiser, who is our former EDC coordinator. Great guy. He does it for Groton. They started, and I'll send out a link to you guys. It's called greatergroton.com. And what it is it's almost like a community conversation, but it's more access for the residents to write anything they want to the municipal government, and they hire it through a company. So everything gets screened before it gets posted. So it's like a monitor page. But what's nice about it, I went to it, it might be something that we can work with Breeze or someone to do on a less costly basis, but so they have featured projects that they talk about. So it's right now they have parking in Mystic, help beautify Groton, suggestion box, which is sometimes you have a question, concern, or just a thought, and you don't know how to make your point. And then you can view some of the info on it, and then they have small surveys on that stuff, or you can just write in. And one thing was fake news versus facts. So people say things they heard in the whether it's on Facebook or whatever, with questions about town, and then someone from town actually answers that. Nope, that's not accurate. This is what's happening with it. But it's really, he was saying they just launched it, but it really engages the community that don't feel comfortable or don't come to meetings to reach out there. And one of the things that made me think about bringing up under these comments tonight is it happened at that meeting. But yesterday I got a text message about somebody that said, hey, I really want to talk about a flashing light at an intersection. Can you call me and talk about it? Or who do I talk to? And if we had something like this going, they can send that out through this process. And then as selectmen or whatever department can go through those or read them out loud and say, hey, what are these concerns that jump out as us, and then try to address those. But I thought that was really neat. I will, and it ties into the community conversation project, that it's really a 24-hour day, 7 days a week, open forum that people can discuss ideas for town or anything that they have. So I'll send you that link, but it's for anyone listening, it's greatergroton.com, and it's really interesting to see. Thanks.
Thank you, Brett. First selectman report in correspondence. So just a couple of things. One is we've been doing field trips to try to get us better prepared to work on the budget in the upcoming budget season. We went so far to the highway garage, and we went to the fire station and the rec building. Next Monday, we're going to the transfer station. I had Sarah Nelson already emailed me that she wants to go. I think these are beneficial. The people do go, seem to get a lot out of it. He would ask some good questions. So now when it comes in front of us at budget time, we have a better understanding of what we're reading on paper. After we do the transfer station on the 20th, we're taking a couple of weeks off for the holidays, get back to do a Hewitt Farm / Gallup House trip on the 10th. And after the first year, we can change the times if a later time works out, however, whatever is best for most people. So Hewitt Farm and Gallup House on the 10th. We're going to do the tour of the town. We're going to take the van and do a tour of the town with Don. He will be driving and showing us different things in town that are issues, whether it be down at Billings Lake or up at Cosada Kill or wherever they may be. Just put eyes on things that come up every once in a while we see, whether it be in a meeting or Facebook. And then I'm going to ask Christine Wagner if she will do tours of the two schools on the 6th. Just field trip number 6, which I don't have a date for either of these yet. Tour one of the schools, and then the second field trip to tour the other school. So that'll be obviously depending on where we are with COVID at the time. Next, I talked to you a little bit about a group I was making of 4 first select people. It's myself, Preston, Griswold, and Voluntown. The reason I chose those 3 towns, well, those 3 of the 5 abutting towns, if you don't count Rhode Island, they have similar issues that we do, very rural. We have actually children participate, or their children participate in each of the towns. So we have children coming from Voluntown and soon, hopefully Preston. We have children going to Griswold to play football. So there's already tie-ins with these towns. And again, they're rural. We have a lot of the same issues. Typically, most of our taxes come from residential taxes. The only difference, Griswold has a borough, which no other town has around here except for Stonington, called Jewett City. I didn't include Ledyard at this time because they have a mayor and they have a town council, and they do things a bit different. And I didn't include Stonington because, again, just the way that town is made up, I think there's some differences that don't quite fit with what the other 3 towns can. So all 3, turns out it's 3 select women and myself. But it turns out they've already all grabbed onto the idea we're going to be meeting quarterly, the 4th week of January, April, July, and October. We're going to rotate starting in Griswold in January and just have an informal chat. There's no really an agenda, just to see. I mean, I got a call today from Sandra from Preston asking me what we did on the opioid thing we talked about a few weeks ago. Volantown was looking for some millings that Donnie Hill was giving them from our transfer station. In return, they'll do things for us. So those are the kind of things we could do with these smaller towns that have similar issues. And the last thing, just in some correspondence, as you both received, there's a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout Award ceremony at the library on January 15th that in the past, myself and Nita attended. And I'd be more than happy to have the three of us attend. It's quite unique when you see the award ceremony. It goes on for about an hour. But it's a good thing to see. The last one I went to was at the Grange, which was kind of cool. I've done a couple at the library. So we'll get a proclamation from the town to this particular person and honoring him as becoming a Boy Scout. And sometimes Heather will show up with one and sometimes Greg will show up with one. But it's just a nice thing to do. It's small towns like ours, we should be doing these kind of things. Okay, so that's it for the first selectman's report. Yes, go ahead. Sure.
So you brought up the tours that we went on, and I just wanted to let both of you guys know that when we talked about the foam issue and the fire trucks that they can't put the new foam in there,
Mhm.
I actually happened to see Heather Summers shortly after that, and I mentioned it to her, and she was really interested to try to help with that process and under the Public Safety Committee. So she asked for Chief Steinhardt's number. I reached out to him, let him know that, and so I put them in communication. So hopefully there could be some movement on that, but I wanted to let you guys know that happened right after.
Talk about red tape, city red tape. They tell them to do one thing, then they can't complete the project. So,
Right.
but it was good to see. It was good to go to the both see the ambulance situation and the fire station. Okay, next, old business. So in old business, there's two things we're going to talk about. The first one is a report from our community conversation group. That way you can be on camera.
I just want to make a comment. So I got my official invitation, launched into the site. I was so impressed, Steph. It looks amazing, amazing. Nice job.
That's all Bree's for.
Yeah.
Bree's designed the entire website, Host is managing it, we saw your registration, super excited.
You registered already?
I did. I'm a rule follower.
Bend it
No.
down.
I tried to turn it on. Okay, I think that's on. Better?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, we had an article in the paper on Friday. Thank you, Bob, for reaching out. Jason reached out to me from the Sun. We're really pleased to see that. And now we're gonna try and push that article out. Lisa Mazzella posted on the town group today, and we're hoping to just get a little more talk happening in the community. We have sent out our invitations. About 100 invitations went out to people via email. Connie, thanks for signing up. Amy, I can't wait for you to sign. So we're hoping to see registrations rolling in this week. We've started to see them. That's exciting. The process seems to be working, so that's reassuring that as people are registering, it's populating to our spreadsheets. So that's really good. We have developed the Every Door Direct Mail and are working with the printer on sort of how the size of that and when it should go out. We're targeting arrival on Monday in people's mailboxes. And so that looks like, if everything goes well, that we're hoping to get that to the post office on Saturday. We're also going to be posting the invitation on the various social media groups around town this week. Is it possible for news and announcements to send out an email to that email group that you all have?
Yes.
Could we target 12/29 or somewhere in the middle of that week?
Send me the email that you want to go out with the information of when you want it to go out and we'll make it happen.
That's perfect. Thank you. I will absolutely do that. We'll be in the quarterly, which will go out on 1/3. We're going to approach the library and ask them to also distribute to their email list.
Did
Yeah,
you see
finally.
you see response from the library and when I,
I did.
yeah. So
And
we,
then I reached out to those individual board members and made sure they each got an invitation.
okay,
as
good.
well.
Thank you.
We are finalizing our moderators and recorders this week. And we have set up the moderator and recorder training for January 6th at 6 o'clock. So now we need. Is it possible to do either the invitation on their website or just a link to our website from the town website? So if people are there, they can click and see it.
I imagine, I wish, if I knew this question coming up, I would ask Jim, but I imagine we could do that. Right?
Yeah, I think the best thing would be to have it in the rotating bulletin that we have up at the top. Yep, okay. So, and then they can click it and it'll go to the website.
I think you have.
I do.
that. You have it?
Mhm.
So the next thing that we need is sort of a work product for you. They call the approaches, so each of the small groups have 3 approaches that the moderator will lead them through to focus the discussion. So the approaches should be general, but they should be the direction that you want to lead the conversation. For example, these are not the approaches you have to go, but for example, if you were to talk about the 298 conversation, the 3 approaches might be purpose the building, tear down the building, and you like it. And then the moderator will lead the discussions in each of those sections and then get more specific stuff.
So wouldn't that be part of the presentation at the beginning of the meeting?
It can be, if you want it. We can talk more about your presentation. And those ideas, the approaches might be things that you want to develop more as you're giving introduction in your presentation beginning. But in these groups, so we have to fill out our participant guide, and then we have to give something to our moderators to bring people through. So if you want to choose whatever approaches you want, but just know that that's the conversation that will happen. And each of those approaches should include some just general ideas or facts, some information about those approaches. So for example, if you were to talk about, so if you look at repurpose, right, repurpose the building. General description might include some limitations on the building. If you're talking about tear down, you might want to include some information on cost, just so you're orienting those small groups to really basic stuff that we know. In your presentation at the beginning, 15 minutes to introduce each conversation, right? And there you want to give a history and then what we know. And of course, it makes sense if you're leading people through approaches that the what we know part would include like cost limitations. What's your feel about that?
I'm probably going to use the slides that were developed already, but just comment on them. Obviously, the POC slide is like Wilcox POC, equivalent, which we're not. I can't advocate whether we go that way or not, but just say that's the way we're drawn. But obviously, there's other ways we can do this. It will be a lot less expensive. But I know that in my presentation, I can't push the conversation in a particular one way or another. It has to be just pretty much generic. These are the facts.
Yeah, I would encourage you to have those slides available, but you may, in your introduction, do a piece over, just talk about things like history. Maybe that's part of the history, that these slides were developed already. And then you want to talk about what we know.
So I can get through the slides fairly quickly because we don't just discuss each one, just tell people what they're looking at. I probably would like, if they're going to be up there, I'd probably like to have some sort of be able to stand in front of some sort of a longer pointer almost. And, I know you can use a cursor. I just think it's more important. It's kind of old school, but say, okay, here it is with one building down here. You know what I'm saying? So I think that would be better than using a cursor at this point, especially if we don't know who's in the audience, if they can't see that far. So.
Just make sure that in your presentation, you're including information about the other approaches. So
Well,
those slides are in regards to a tear down approach, right?
There's 4 slides, but it's tearing down different portions of the building, with one of them being tearing down everything. So no, I can do that fairly quickly with giving those I mean, there's always one option of doing absolutely nothing and just keep paying 130,000 here. if we keep going the way we're going, there's a do nothing option is always an option. But there's the other option is probably the most expensive option is to tear everything down. And then but then what do we do? So, but there's many options in between.
So I think the three of you need to decide how you want to lead those conversations. I don't know that you want to have an approach be do nothing, because a do nothing approach might not generate any conversation.
No, I wouldn't. I would hope it would generate like 1.5 seconds of conversation. Just say, we can't do that.
But it could be under new ideas that someone says, why don't we just leave them? And then, two other people say, we don't want to, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we can discuss it as a board prior to that, and then whatever the board decides on,
Can we give you a due date?
not if it's Sunday.
Um,
Thank you. Yeah, well, why don't we do it on the 25th? We get it for you for the 25th. No, kidding.
She's actually, the request was the 21st. If you could have your three approach,
And when do we meet? Because we'd have to have a special meeting.
or you can just, briefly discuss. Doesn't have to be anything big or scary, and I don't want to have an additional.
Maybe we can discuss them, make it part of the agenda on the 20th. Since we're gonna go and have a special meeting on the 20th anyway, for the tour of the transfer station.
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
We can spend a
What?
10-minute discussion on that.
My other recommendation was if each selectman wanted to send me your input, I could compile things and then send it back out to you because you're not discussing it as a group. Whatever you prefer,
never did
or
that.
you could include it on the 20th and then we could put it all together and I could set it up.
Yeah, I would say, let's discuss it on the 20th. Just spend 10 minutes on it and put it as the agenda. So that way it's open to the public if they want to walk around the transfer station. with us.
Can we just get a little more specific on what do you mean by exactly on the approach? So so if you talk about the slides, that's ideas that were brought up. So we're coming up with different approaches
So-
/ ideas?
So two different things. Bob has to make a presentation to introduce each conversation, right, at the very beginning. That should be 15 minutes, where he's going to talk about history of each topic and what we know about each topic. It sounds to me like Bob wants to include those slides in some sort of historic content.
Only so people can visualize what we're talking about. When a building comes down, what does it look like when it's no longer there?
But that's a proposed use, right? So you're presenting a proposal to discuss.
But I'm not presenting one, I'm presenting all the proposals. So there's this part, everything.
Bob, we could also hang the renderings up if you just want to have them up.
We could do
in
that.
this room, so that people can walk around and see. I remember for the POCD conversation, I think Juliet had renderings up.
So again, it was only going to be talk about what it looks like when a building's no longer there. And it being an option that part or all this building could come down. But I don't think we should get into what they're repurposing. Repurposing, you could use the word repurposing, but I don't think we should get into what those options are. That's what the small group should be doing.
I would agree that one of your approaches should be repurpose the building.
We have,
That's the approach, repurpose the building. And then the small group, you're absolutely right, says, we want to see this or that. in the-
so repurpose, we can, one thing, if we do nothing as far as the buildings, as far as taking them down, that is, you can still repurpose the entire thing, including the one-story wing. But every time a piece comes down, how are we going to repurpose what's still standing? And how do we repurpose the ground that the building used to be on?
Right, that's why I might leave it general, it's just repurpose.
Exactly.
Right, those small groups.
No, that's, so I'm asking the question, but I'm not answering the question. It's up to the groups to answer the question.
So you have to come up with 3 different ways to look at it. And so if one is repurposed, then one maybe should be tear down and let that group explore. Does that mean tear down a piece, a total? What happens then? Let that conversation happen. And then a third week, what are ideas we haven't talked about? New ones. And then you just want to give a little general description about what that means. So maybe if repurpose, when you talk about repurpose, you're only talking about repurposing the inside of the space. And when you say tear down, you're talking about tear down and then. and then new ideas, maybe these general, but just a conversation about limitations.
We understand.
Sound good?
Got it.
So we've talked so much about the 298 situation, and I can definitely see us going in 3 different approaches for that. But the ARPA funds are a little bit more like, wow, that could be huge. Do you have ideas of?
I don't. I was hoping that sort of pointing you in the direction of 3 general approaches for 298 would allow you all to come up with 3 approaches, just general approaches.
Yeah. All right. I think we might need more than 10 minutes on the 20th. I'm just saying.
Well, we put email some ideas and then
Yeah.
discuss openly at the meeting.
One of the things that we shared with the Community Conversation Committee was the 2-sheet kind of quick bullet points of what ARPA funds could be used for. So one approach could be to take those categories and group them so that your 3 approaches are these 2 categories, these 2 categories, and these 2 categories for the types of uses of the funds. So I can send that out to you guys so you can kind of refamiliarize yourselves with it. So I wasn't here for community conversations in the past. So is it that people pick which of those approaches, or every group talks about all the approaches?
Every small group will go through all 3.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Just didn't know if people had to pick what they were going to talk about.
No, every group will talk about it, so every group will give feedback and all of those things. So the last question is, in terms of copies, do you prefer that we come to town hall and make our own copies of the participant guide, the moderator, or report guide, or do you prefer that I email those to you and that you just call me when they're done?
Ivana can make the copies. She will hear this as she listens to the meeting, so you can send them to us.
And then I think that you have probably started inviting the people that we talked about. One of the register or something,
Which one registered?
to sign.
Mhm. Yeah, and I actually got an email yesterday from Jennifer Dayton. She's going to join us from Singapore.
Yes, she registered. So we're excited to have this new option, especially, I really didn't think about it for someone like Jennifer who would be in Singapore, but really for someone who wasn't maybe comfortable being in a group of, how great that we can have people from Ireland here in that period of time.
Yes, I'll make sure those, I was going to go to the Board of Finance tomorrow night and address it with them. So, yeah, I already talked to Tom Fabian about it.
That's great.
He hasn't registered yet, but Paul is. Well, I'll see him tomorrow night.
So as you're speaking to the people that we're sort of targeting to be listeners, so chief chairs of Board of Finance, or that some of them, Fabian, are you asking them to sign up and participate, or are you explaining to them how we want them to participate?
I was telling them to come and participate. So if you want them not to participate, just to be listeners, I would have to know that.
I think there's a value to having them receive the information from the larger group, because those people specifically will be involved in the decisions, right, as we further them, or their stakeholders. So for example, the fire department, rec department, maybe stakeholders in what happens to these buildings and what happens to other things. And so we've identified a number of people and sent invitations to them from the fire department.
So for an example, the Board of Finance tomorrow night, would you like me to ask Paul Simon to be one of the ones that is a listener, but any members of his board would love to come and be participants? Got it.
Thank you so much. I think that's everything that my group.
I got something for you. When we walked around school today, we realized that the rooms that we're gonna have these breakout sessions in have no furniture. So we need to do a work group, probably, I'd be glad to volunteer, maybe on the Saturday, no, the Saturday, the Friday before maybe. And we have a bunch of folding chairs. I heard there was none, but we just found about 100 of them today in one of the rooms. So we can maybe get those folding chairs, and if you let me know how big the groups are gonna be, maybe we can do, 8 chairs in a circle and put them in, depending on how many rooms we need. But we can probably do that if we had a small work group of 3 or 4 or 5 people to do that. Hate to have them all go there and have to sit on the floor and we'll make sure the heat doesn't get turned down between now and then.
Anything that we
Yeah, that wasn't a true community conversation. It was kind of like a modified version. And we could have done that back here. But it's tough because then groups can hear each other. And if you remember the one at the library, each table was given specific things to speak about. And what Steph's saying, they're not. They're going to be able to speak about everything in their group.
And I think part of that was using the library, right, and that's sort of the structure of that space. We thought it would be helpful if we're having one of the conversations about 298. Let's be here and let's bring people to the space.
We're gonna give tours prior to the selectmen are and whoever else, if we can get a few others to give tours as to groups as they come through them. I want to see it because I think it does open up everyone's eyes when you walk through this facility and see things.
Steph, what do you see as our role, the three of us, during that day?
I think most importantly, welcome people and engage them in conversation. I think it's so important for during the tours, during lunch, after the feedback session. But I really see it largely as you all listening and really hearing the feedback from the small groups as they're working. I mean, if you want to walk around.
Okay, good.
Go into these classrooms as they're working, but then to hear, and you probably won't see it, right, as you're just moving around in small groups, but at the end, when you're hearing what those groups identify as common ground, things that that entire diverse group can agree on, and you're seeing that, and then you may start to see that other groups found common ground on some of the same things. You're really gonna see and hear the product of each of these groups and how it opens up the future. I think that's the most important.
But as we're stopping in a room, we're not giving any inputs, just said to listen.
Just
And as
listen.
far as the other people that are going to be listeners, as you said, during that same time when the breakout sessions are going on, will they be able to do the same thing?
They certainly can. I mean, I think if our registration is very low, then I think we assign those people to groups. I think the three of you can never be in one of those groups, but I think the other people will assign them to groups. If the registration is low, and if not, the idea that they can hear that feedback, I think is so important.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
so people are getting invites and then they can pre-register. Is there a deadline for pre-registration?
No, we're encouraging the registration. Thankfully, we're doing that. Because we need to be really intentional about forming our groups. So the more pre-registration we have, the better those groups are. We're not going to turn people away at the door. There's no deadline to signing up, but of course, it's also going to inform our food and beverage purchases, all that sort of stuff. So we are asking people to please pre-register.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Steph.
Just one last, only because I'm so acutely aware of the COVID spike and what's going on. I think that our masks going to be, I think in January 8th, we could potentially be in a worse situation than we are now due to the spread over Christmas. So I think that we need to make sure that we have options of like almost individually wrapped things that are not like just out on a table for people to kind of touch. And I just, if we could give some thought to that, I think it will. And as you start to advertise more as the time draws near, making sure that people know that if we do decide masks on during and that food is individually wrapped or something like that, I think it might make people feel better and prevent a super spreader event.
Of course, so in terms of our room setup, if you see there's nothing in those rooms, so we'll
Yeah.
have the opportunity to.
Absolutely. You
really
can
spread those
socially
chairs
distance in
out.
the,
And if a small group gets together and decides that's not far enough and they want to go further, we'll have the opportunity to do that. And it's really flexible. We're gonna take our cue on masks from whatever you are all deciding is the policy at that time. You don't feel like it's, we should be determining that. That's for you guys to determine. And in terms of food, we made a decision early on that regardless of where we were with COVID, the idea of everybody like touching was just a really bad idea. And so we're gonna set it up, I think, Nate, in here. It's gonna be salad, pizza, and then there'll be pre-dyed snacks that we'll have in those rooms. Only bottled drinks except for
Perfect.
coffee. But what'll happen is you'll be there and you'll just say what you want. We'll have on gloves, and we're gonna go get it and give it to you.
Perfect.
So that we don't have lots of hands.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Excellent job. Just so impressed.
Okay, thank you. Brett, are you going to do the report on the North Southampton Works program?
Yeah, so right now I've talked to a few businesses. There's some things that we need to do to really get it out there. This is the actual handout, if anyone has seen it. This is the color version. So this is what's getting handed out to businesses. I really need to sit down with Nate because he is the staff for EDC. So I was hoping that he would run with this more and get out there and start doing some business visitations, which is part of his role as well, to get this out there. I mention it to every business that I walk into, but I have to go down and we have to get some more of those printed and really get it out there. I did talk to a few businesses that were in the process of filling out those applications and going to Sector. I don't know if those have been done yet, but Sector was in transition, getting ready for their annual meeting. They also took on a new staff member that would be helping with this compared to who I've been dealing with the whole time. So this is just in the works to get moving now. Like I said, I really need Nate to get out there in the public and see as many businesses as he can over the next few weeks to get it out there. I also would like Jim to put it on the website, so it's there for people to see, not only the businesses, but also our residents to see what's going on and what we're offering.
Okay, have you talked to Nate about that yet?
No, we've talked initially as this was part of the program and for him to be out there, but I haven't followed up with him to see when he's going out there. It was part of our EDC discussion that he would be going out there visiting. So
Okay, so he's aware of it, he just hasn't set it up yet.
he hasn't. I mean, with the transition of between new EDC members and Nate being new to town and still working through a lot of his things with planning and zoning and enforcement that he's working through, I think he's been busy. So I will reach out to him tomorrow.
Can you give him like a list of businesses to target, or is he?
We have a business listing that we've had for
That
years
fit under this program?
that fit under this program. Yes,
So he's not wasting his time going to someone that doesn't?
correct.
Okay.
It is on the website, but it's only a one-page version of it. So if you can send Jim the updated with the color cover sheet, and then
Okay.
he can update that link.
Can he put that in that
Rotating bulletin. yes.
rotating bulletin? Yeah, perfect.
Did you take down the one for the town meeting yet? November
Oh, yeah,
22nd?
yeah, yeah. Thank you. I keep seeing that too.
Is it
It's
down?
not in there now.
Okay,
Okay.
take it down.
Yeah,
So it's open and businesses can apply.
it's open and businesses
Cool.
can apply. So what they need to do is send in, they apply for it. And it doesn't mean they're hiring someone this week, but if it takes them 3 weeks to hire someone, we have all the information, or Sector has the information that says this was their pre-employment or pre-program employment, and this is their employment now.
That's a finished copy.
Yeah,
Christine, you want to we'll just give this to Jim tomorrow?
No, we need it electronically so he can,
we don't have a scanner. so.
it won't be as nice if. you
Yes,
just
I
send
will,
us an
I will
email.
bring that to him. And then I just also, and I'll reach out to Sector too, so she can reach out to Jim to make sure she can sign into the email address and get all that. I think it's supposed to forward, but I'll check with Jim on that.
All right, thanks. Registrar of Voters presentation.
Prior years for the registrar. And one was a bond contention. Consideration
are to take place that include our participation, that prior to posting a date and time, they can check our availability. In the past, I was told, well, your deputies can be part of that. But in the same scenario, how do we know that there's availability at that time? You know, we can't just say, well, I can say, I'm sorry, I've got something going on, but I can't say that. Absolutely happy to be here and be a part of it, but that's what I'm asking.
That seems easy enough. So we're basically just talking about town meetings and referendums. Okay.
My second question is, then my second request is that when a referendum is being held, and we're doing this in the Registrar voters annual, the committee's manual, referendums are typically held from noon to 8 p.m. However, it is the option of the committee, the board, to designate the time that they wish. So prior to today and prior to coming to this meeting, I looked back at 4 different referendums and the number of people who came to those meetings. Back to January of 2020, 661 people came out of 4,105. September 20th, 462 people. The biggest one was June 28th of this year, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what the referendum was, I can look at the content, it was 1410, and May 17th was 494 people. So to have a staff to be prepared, you know, for a certain percentage, I believe we're wasting tax dollars in having people show up at 5 in the morning and literally sit until the winter time typically is around 11 into 12. You could say 11 to me, but honestly, it's a sit around and talk to yourself. So I'm asking if the board would consider making those changes.
Okay, so we're going to listen to all your requests tonight, and then we're going to discuss it and make a ruling at our next meeting rather than tonight. But hang on one second, Amy. I worked two votes in a row because I wanted to see for myself how it was. Both times there was very little traffic early in the morning. I know by state statute that we have to run a 6 to 8 on an election in November, general election November. We have the option pretty much in everything else, whether it be petitions, whether it be something coming out of a town meeting. So I don't disagree. I saw very little traffic in the morning. Again, I saw 2 groups of poll workers, which we pay roughly $100 a day to be here, except for the ones that are here all day. We feed them, and it was a small amount of traffic. The other thing is, if the Board of Selectmen go from 12 to 8, we don't have to vote on the time. If we change it to something other than 12 to 8, except for the November 2nd general election, then we don't have to vote on that either. That's just by statute. So whenever we've had a 6 to 8 vote, which was not a general election, it means the Board of Selectmen had to vote on that to say, yes, we want to move the time. So anyway, Amy, you had a question or a comment?
You're getting something, not a lot of people, maybe have more dedicated ones that are there all the time, but sometimes they can't go back down here.
So what you're saying is it's a shortage of workers. You're trying to get people, you have the regular people that you do every time, but then there's sometimes a turnover you can't fill in. I get it. So again, with lack of numbers, it's easier to do one shift from 12 to 8 than it is to do 2 shifts, because I think we're going 5 to 1 and then like 1 to 8 or something. So, all right, comments?
Have you kind of costed it out to see what the savings would be to the town if we went? So we would only have to, do you normally do that? You have two shifts is what you're saying. So we'd only have to pay 1 shift. Do we have an approximate savings to the town? Okay.
I actually did when I was here one of those times. And when I figured in what it cost for breakfast and what it cost, I think it was like 7 poll workers that changed. So if we pay people roughly $100 a day, that's $700. And the cost of breakfast, whatever that was, Connie, $50. So roughly $750 to, and I mean, there are some people that like to vote when they go to work, but if it adds up to be 35 people between 6 and 11, does it make sense?
So no, I don't disagree. So I know that this came up at a town meeting before that we voted on. But what you're suggesting is just for referendums, that for a general election, we'd still be open from 6 to 8 p. Okay, okay.
And really, our biggest payroll is the 6, after it's 5 a.m. to about 9:30, depending on the actual turnout. I have those numbers from what a full day is, and that's the payroll portion of it, and I have the expense side of it. For the meals, basically, we're doing 2 meals a day. We do breakfast.
Yeah, I'd like to look into it more over this next 2 weeks. Part of me thinks that it depends on what the referendum, to me, so when we vote on the budget, that's a big referendum. That we should have the most access we can to that. So I think if we look at it, it doesn't always have to be that. We can always set special ones. I know when you guys approached at that town meeting, then I was in favor of moving it to 12. I forgot what the topic was the next day, but it wasn't, I mean, it was something important. They're all important, but there are levels of degrees in some of these things. So I'd like to look at that. And just doing the quick stats, it looks like 81 registrars have 4-year terms and 88 have 2-year terms. I don't know what made some of these other towns switch or change.
We're
Oh,
not done
sorry.
with this one yet.
I jumped. Well, I was thinking that you said we were going to talk about them all.
Yeah, so
All right.
so back on your comments, Brett, and I agree with you. So I'm not saying we should vote to change all of them to be the same. We always have that ability, but
Right.
just in general, make them 12 to 8, except for the general election. But I think budget is just as important. Budget is something that determines the fate of the town. So we can, when it comes to a budget referendum, say, no, we want this one to go from 6 to.
Right.
But as long as they have plenty of time on the date and they, to get the number of workers that they need, but we know that going in, it's an important one. I mean, sure, when we did the referendum on the schools 2 or 3 times, those needed to be all day.
Yeah.
So, but if it's a petition or it's something that's, I think we did one when does the town have the right to rent out the 298 building? That was a referendum. Did that really need to have to be from 6?
Right, I agree.
And I think that was probably the other point I want to make. There's going to be topics that are going to be more significant than others. They're all significant, but there's going to be others that are going to draw
Right.
a higher turnout. So I guess I would also like to go back and look at the 628. That could have been the budget. I mean, it was. So that was
Yeah.
1,410 people coming out of again 4,000.
Right. See, to me, that's something that's probably worthwhile of having that extra little expense to make it work.
I'm not opposed to that. I think we need to be really careful about how many times we're changing the voting time. So we're going to need to do really careful communication with the residents, because the last thing you want is for people assuming that every vote I go to is going to be 6 to 8, and it is a 12 to 8. And now we have people here and everything's closed
Right.
up and there's confusion. And I just don't want that to deter people the next time. So I think whatever we decide, it should be somewhat standardized. Maybe we make an exception for the budget referendum because it's so critical, but we need to manage that message carefully. Otherwise, we're going to end up losing what few voters we have on certain times.
Yes, I agree. Do you know when in your history, looking back, did we switch to the all-day voting? Because it used to be, years ago, it was 12 to 8.
I think it's, honestly, I think it was when the prior Selectmen came on, because prior to taking office, I know I worked a referendum where we came in at 11 and it wasn't 12. So they
Okay.
had done them in the past.
Yeah, no, I know it was somewhat recent. I just don't know how far back it went.
Well, years ago. If that, I mean, I could probably look it up.
All right.
you know. And then I would also suggest, and we've done this before, but utilizing the reader board outside, the
Mhm.
electronic reader board, because I know that we had asked permission in the past to have our meetings, all of the town meetings posted on there. They were very open-minded. to
Yeah.
it. just
We had the
reached
last
out.
one posted.
Yeah, I think they
Reached out
allow.
to them. Yeah.
Just a question as we're talking about, and I didn't comment on the prior one, but the town meetings and referendums, there are certain deadline and dates that we're limited by law to have them in a certain amount of time. So you're just saying based on, so if we know it's that week, you just want to make sure that there's, because it might be that we have to have it that week. So
Right.
there's not a lot of room for,
I think it just asking to give them as much time as possible so they can plan.
gotcha, okay.
And it's been fortunate, there was one time I think that we had someone else come in, I mean, 9 times out of 10, yes. I just think it's, I know, Joan said it was hard sometimes. They've done it for 6 years. So, all right. My next item of business, for consideration, is the term of office for the registrars from a 2-year to 4-year term. Intake, that like, what's on, not, no.
Tap it, hold the thing down. It goes up by itself. Push that gray button down.
I just heard I saw a light. Battery's going down too. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I can always hear myself talk, So again, trying to ask for consideration to change the term of office for the registrars from 2 years to 4 years. I understand that in the past that, Joan, she worked it, then she became the registrar for 6 years. Gladys was another story, it's like a 25-year term. And, there is an opinion, I think in a lot of towns, that who wants to be the registrar of voters, I'm enjoying the job. But what I will say is that we are required to have our certification in a 2-year window. We have up to 2 years to get our certification. So we could wait, get our certification prior to the next election, and then not get reelected. So now we have obtained all the knowledge that we could possibly have, maybe, and then not have a job to do it. I don't think it hurts. I think it could only help. So that's my commentary on that.
Okay.
And the
Thank you.
last is,
Can I just interject for 1 second? So just so the selectmen know procedurally, what you would need to do is institute an ordinance to change that from a 2-year term to a 4-year term.
correct.
And that would need to go to town
That
meeting.
would go to a town meeting. It doesn't have to go on a vote. Vote.
No, it can be voted on in the town meeting.
Okay. And my last item is, and Amy and I have had this conversation, and actually Brett and I have, and I think most of you we've had, is to relocate our office back somewhere into the town hall. It was a great idea at the time with COVID. And I think the location for voting is premier here. Obviously we have a lot of space. We're able to work well. There could be some minor changes to that. However, we are here sometimes all by ourselves, even with the office up front. There's still a distance between the main office for the superintendent, et cetera, and our office. And I don't always feel like it's a safe environment. I think we don't have the camaraderie of working with our other teammates at the town hall. If anybody wants to come in and change their voter registration, they go to the town hall. We get them from Antoinette. She will get the hard copies and she will give them. So no one has come here to do that. Even at assigned times, no one comes. And the majority of people honestly start doing them online, through DMV or just an online registration. But whenever we need service from Jim, or I need help from anyone, it's time delay. And I just feel like from a safety perspective, anybody can walk into this building and go sit in the corner and for 2 women to be here by themselves, it's not a great deal.
Where was it prior?
It was where
The new town hall?
In the little closet that the building inspector uses. And again, it's not a bad space even because it's not the same hours, you know.
There's a little room between the assessor's office. If you go into the assessor's office, there's a little room once you go into the right
So it's currently taken.
by the
It's
building
currently,
inspector.
so,
And prior to that, it was a desk in the tax assessor's office. Like it was all part of, they just had a desk there that they shared.
There's some moving parts going on in town hall right now, so it's something we can probably at least discuss.
I agree with the safety concerns here, even meeting and you brought up the voting side of it and I do like the bigger space here, but I can tell you that there were people that mostly older people that complained about how long of a walk it is from the parking lot to here.
so hold on, would we move voting?
No, just the
Okay.
office. I'm just saying that was a concern.
Yeah.
And technically, we do have to, at some point, officially move voting here if this is the long-term plan. So what was sent to the state was we were moving here because of COVID. So officially, the legislative body of the town decides where voting is. And
So does that have to go to town meeting?
I would go to, town meeting at some point. If it's official, we got away with it during COVID. So I saw the letters back to the Secretary of State's office and ours, but I mean, there's a lot of moving things on what this building will become. So I guess that all can wait, but I do agree with you on the safety concerns and, I think that's one of the nice things about being able to go to town hall, especially someone new resident. You go in, I mean, that's what I did when I moved here. That's the first time I met the registrars because, they were there. And actually I met the Democrat registrar first and she was there and, she was helpful and they had opposite schedules at that point. So somebody was almost rotating, almost always there, but it was nice. And it was, because people, you're right, don't think to come here.
The other thing, and I'll conclude, but we had a conversation one other time, if we are to maintain this. To ask where people from. But if we turn it over here and we created some more parking spaces. There's a chance that there's a home there. So you go in one and out the other. And we'll see. And we had brought that up, but we were. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Some of those older people walk and Bob, you were actually really good. You put some back in their car and told them to drive around, which is good. It's just, I never heard it before the past 2 times we had voting there, but last time I heard it probably at least 10 times for the walking.
Oh,
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Connie.
Connie, wait, logistically, what needs to move back with you? And are there things that if you moved and your offices were there and things were there that you wouldn't have here for votes? But where would the files live, here or there? And you wouldn't need them on election during voting? Okay. Stays here. Thank you.
So did the tax collector move from that desk in the back corner?
Not
We're
yet.
in
Town hall?
progress right now. That's what Bob was saying, that we have moving parts.
Okay, so that spot might be open at some point.
Mhm.
Okay,
So,
which is another benefit because the registrars work hand in hand with the town clerk on a lot of election issues.
how do you want to handle all of their requests? Is this
So I think
something?
what we do is we look at them. We can discuss them, not amongst ourselves, but if you have any questions, you ask Christine, you can ask Connie, you can ask Amy. Whatever you want to do to clarify in your mind how you want to work on this. And I'd say when we come back to the next meeting, which will be in January, because we're not going to probably have one at Christmas. So in January, we'll come back and we'll take each of these. The ones we can vote on, we will. If we can't vote on something, we can vote to send it to town meeting on number 3. And then that way between now and the next time we have any kind of election or referendum, you'll have answers on. And if we can get you back over to town hall I don't expect the tax collector to be in that back room until after the first year anyway. So it's still a work in progress, but I was not gonna be like Stephanie, give me until like the 21st and. Okay, perfect. All right, 22nd for you guys. Okay, thanks.
So this will automatically go on the agenda for the.
We'll put it on the
January.
old business for the next agenda. Okay. Budget schedule. So in your packet,
Thank you, ladies, very much.
in your packet, we had a tentative budget schedule that was put together. It used to be put together by Nita using her format. Christine made an attempt to put one together. It's probably pretty accurate to, we never always stay on it exactly. There's snowstorms that happen, meetings get canceled. Again, we don't know what's going on with the COVID situation. So, but you need something as guidance. So this is where we are. As in the past, we've had the Public Works, EDC, land use, library do combined presentations to both us and the Board of Finance. Also, fire department, ambulance. They again present to both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. So they're not giving, it used to be you give two presentations, 2 different nights. Now we come and you just do a joint meeting. We all hear it at once, which actually works out better because then you can hear what the Board of Finance concerns and questions may be, and they hear what ours might be. So, and it eliminates a couple of nights from the budget process, which works out pretty well. So, yeah, that's where we are. So what we did last time is we get budget proposals sent to us. We get the presentation, the Board of Selectmen would go back. In the past, Mike would he'd sit down with Christine and make some suggested cuts, bring it to the Board of Selectmen meeting, go through those suggested cuts. We would vote either to agree or disagree. Sorry, is that my phone? That means there's something going on in town with the ambulance. Okay, sorry about that. So then he would bring it back to the Board of Selectmen. We would either say, yes, Mike, we agree. That's a good place we should cut, or no, we disagree, and this is why. And then he would say to us, okay, Nita, where would you like to go? Bob, where would you like to go? And then that's the process we work through. And then once we get that done, we'd go to the Board of Finance with that. They would then decide whether we did enough or not. Sometimes they give it back to us, and we'd have to go back and make deeper cuts. And that's how the process would work.
What is the town's fiscal year run from?
So we're July 1st through June 30th. The things I just want to highlight on the schedule that are hard and fast dates are the annual town meeting by ordinance is the first Monday in May. So that is May 2nd. And then we would go to referendum. You can go a week to 2 weeks after that. We typically go 2 weeks. So there's enough time for people to get the information on what the budget is. So that's on Monday, May 16th. The Board of Finance has decided that the annual budget hearing is going to be on Monday, April 11th. It has to be at least 2 weeks prior to the annual town meeting, but the Monday, 2 weeks prior to May 2nd is the Monday of public school break. So that's why it's been moved to April 11th. And I will also say I have a typo on Thursday, December 16th. It says that the due date is Friday, just January 21st. It is the 14th. I will fix that. It's right on the left side. It is wrong in the column in the middle. So I will fix that typo.
Right. I have to say, I do like this schedule better than previous years when, it was due like January 1st, which is always difficult for commissions to have their meetings and do it the proper way. So I like this. I do have a question on how will the software lack of affect this timeline and your ability to
Oh, I
do
have
all
a
that?
plan. So
Okay,
I have
I'd love to
already
hear it.
figured out my spreadsheet that I'm going to use, and I figured out how I can link individual cells to other spreadsheets or other sheets within the workbook. Bob was there when I figured it out. I was very excited, he could tell you. So I have created a template that's going to go out to all departments and boards and commissions for them to complete. The Board of Finance is going to review that tomorrow at their meeting to make sure that it has everything that I need and everything that they need from the Board of Finance perspective. So that will go out on Thursday to everyone. It's due back in by the 14th. And then that gives me it gives me a week-ish to put everything in, make sure everything matches up so that it can go to you all for review starting on the 25th.
All right. And then so will that software be in by the end of budget season?
So we have a go live date of July 1st with the new software. So we will implement it for the new fiscal year. We'll get everything set up in the background. We'll load the budget in so that when we start the new fiscal year, everything is ready to go.
Now, does the Board of Ed use that for their budgeting purposes? Do they use the
They're
budget
going to
building?
this year.
Okay, so they're undergoing a new way of doing it too. So they are due on the 9th?
Yes, they're supposed to present on March 9th. This draft schedule was shared with the Board of Ed chair. So if she has feedback, she'll be attending the Board of Finance meeting tomorrow.
All right, perfect.
So I know it is a little bit aggressive, but so that we can meet that annual town meeting date, we have to be this aggressive. So I tried to push it as much as I could so people that meet the second week of the month can still get things taken care of. So hopefully everybody will be ready. The only thing that I did not add to this schedule was a presentation by the capital improvement work group, which I think should coincide with the fire company and ambulance presentation, since those take up big parts of the capital. But we can kind of
So that'd
finalize
be
that
the
as we go.
16th.
And that would be anything that's not, it would be basically all the other selectmen's capital group areas. So Public Works presents theirs as part of their presentation. Fire company usually presents theirs as their presentation, and same thing with the ambulance. So this would just be all other miscellaneous capital.
The only thing as I look at this, I would ask that if we continue to do hybrid meetings, which it's beneficial to the public, that we upload those budget sheets so the public can follow along as we discuss. I think it's important, and it's actually in the governor's orders, but I think it's especially during budget season, if they can see it as we discuss it, I think it's helpful for everybody.
I don't disagree. I just feel that people get confused as to what draft and what iteration of the budget, and when they see something from February and then it's completely different in April, they say, but I saw it and it was in there. So I just think there needs to be a lot of clarification.
I think
by the
that's our
boards.
job to educate and between us and Board of Finance to say, look, this is the process. And maybe that gets people more involved to follow along the way and say, hey, look at these cuts, or look at, this is where it started, this is where it ended, and see the work that was done.
So I think if I read the governor's direction, it was on, when we were doing all Zoom meetings, all online, that was the case, but I'm not sure that's the case on hybrid. I'll have to read it again, but I thought when I read hybrid meetings were exempt because you had the opportunity to come in person. But I'll look at it again. But I mean, again, I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think that falling back on the governor's direction, I don't think that applies to hybrid, but I could be wrong. I'll check it out.
And it might, I don't know when they expire, so it might not even come into play, but.
But I still think it's a good idea. I understand where Christine's coming from. There should be some confusion, but it is our job to educate. So, okay. American Rescue Fund. So there's a couple of things in front of us tonight. There's a smaller number. Community Conversations looking for an appropriation that we could go to the Board of Finance with, and we may want to go to that sooner instead of later. So that would be something that maybe I'd want to present tomorrow evening, only because that's coming out upon us really fast. The second one on the Small Business Assistance Program, Brett, are you going to do a presentation on that tonight?
Yeah, I can.
So let's take them one at a time. Do you have something like community conversation, Christine? It's not in the pack. I know you showed me something today, but.
Yep. So I drafted the memo that would be submitted to the Board of Finance tomorrow if this was approved. So the category is Community Conversation Administration, not to exceed $2,000. The Community Conversation Committee will be leading a workshop on January 8th, 2022 to discuss the future uses of 298 Norwich Wesley Road and the town use of the remaining American Rescue Plan funds. The Community Conversation Committee will be purchasing supplies for the workshop, creating a website to promote the event, and doing a direct mailing to all homes in the town to increase town participation. The funds will also be used for refreshments at the event for residents. Total ARPA fund request, $2,000.
And
Does
like
that cover
any,
it, Steph?
and like any appropriation, if the money's unspent, get it returned back.
Correct.
Correct. Okay,
Oh, and the total ARPA funds allocated to date is $268,185.20.
thank you. All right, so off track, we don't have to go back with the, since we already approved it as a Board of Selectmen, it wasn't this board, but the past board on the monies for the ARPA funds for the software for the planning office. That's already been done, right? They're going to present to the Board of Finance on that.
Yes, so that's not included in the 268 number because it's only been approved by one board, not fully
it.
implemented. And that is being presented to the Board of Finance tomorrow because it was approved by Planning and Zoning
Got it.
2 weeks ago.
And, but I will present the $2,000 tomorrow night. Okay. All right, so we have to then, as a Board of Selectmen, decide if we want to do that or not. So I guess that we need a motion.
I make a motion to appropriate $2,000 of the ARPA funds to the community conversation.
Great,
I second.
perfect. Is there any other discussion?
Do we want to make, I'm thinking, do you want to not exceed 2,000 or just 2,000 flat?
Well, when we came up with the number, it was just a rough number that the community conversation group came up with, and they thought it was going to be give or take 1,700, 1,800. So we rounded up to 2,000, knowing that the money could be returned at you. So
For
if
the,
you-
for
if
the
you-
purposes of the allocated amount, it's 2,000.
Okay,
But we know for how it is to be used, it's not to exceed.
gotcha.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. All in favor of approving the motion to go to the Board of Finance and ask for appropriation of $2,000 out of the ARP funding for the community conversation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So all three of us, 3-0. Okay, thank you. Next, Small Business Assistance Program.
All right, so just a little background. Both of you are aware, this was something we talked about with the prior administration and the Board of Selectmen then, and it was a work in progress. We basically talked about allocating $100,000 of the American Rescue Plan Act money towards business, small business grant assistance for businesses within our town that have a demonstrated need due to COVID. It fits in perfectly with what ARPA funds are for. And this is a fluid program, but this is something that the details are they're pretty much all here. There are some things that EDC, it's beyond our scope after we have the idea in the program, that there are some things that probably do need to be tweaked by Christine or the process of how it goes there. But this is the program. We brought it up at the last EDC meeting to actually approve it in this form, understanding that there are some little things that come up. And just like any program, we're asking for the approval of the structure of the program as the idea, and then those little tweaks that might come along the way have to. And we understand, since this is a $100,000 ask, that it does go to town meeting, so it's nothing that's going to happen in the next month or two. So we looked at it as a 3-month window to get it to hopefully a town meeting. The program, I can read this if you guys don't. Do you guys have a copy of it?
I read it in the packet.
All right, so I'll just give a program overview to anyone listening. The North Stonington COVID-19 Assistance Program was established to provide limited one-time direct financial assistance to eligible North Stonington small businesses that employ 25 or fewer employees that have been adversely impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. The program is funded through funds from the American Rescue Funds Act, a lot of funds talking in that one sentence, and administered by the Town of North Stonington Economic Development Commission. The program is intended to provide assistance to allow eligible North Stonington businesses to prevent, prepare for, and respond to coronavirus pandemic. Consequently, use of the funds must directly related to the pandemic and result in public safety health emergency. To be eligible for assistance under this program, applicants must be a for-profit business enterprise that is physically located within the town of North Stonington and that employs 25 or fewer employees. The business must have been in operation and be current on its federal, state, and local tax obligations as of December 31st, 2020. Further, the business must not have received or been approved to receive federal or state assistance for the same purpose. The business must be able to demonstrate satisfactorily that it has been negatively impacted by corona pandemic and must not be debarred or ineligible to receive federal funds. The program ranges, they may apply for grants up to $10,000. Funding is limited and anticipated that requests for assistance will be greater than funding on hand. Not all businesses approved for participation will receive the maximum amount, and it's anticipated that the average grant will be in the range of $2,000 to $3,000. Applications will be accepted and processed first come, first served, and grants awarded on a rolling basis until funds are exhausted. So just for eligible uses of the funds, funds are intended to allow eligible North Stonington businesses to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the pandemic. Funds may be used for interior renovations, leasehold improvements, particularly those that achieve social distancing requirement, the purchase of equipment and furnishing, the purchase of consumable supplies, including personal protective equipment, disinfecting materials, marketing, and advertising expenses, other legitimate business costs deemed appropriate for public participation at the discretion of the grant review committee. Funds may not be used for payment of non-business expenses, for political or lobbying activities, or for any other purpose. So that is it in a nutshell. But basically the application process would be, there would be two forms. You can do it online and submit, or at town hall. What would happen is the applicant would apply. You can see the application attached. The applicant would apply. Nate, our PDZO officer, would go through the application and make sure that they submitted all the information provided. So they would get Nate would be the only one that would see a tax return and all accompanying documents. At that time, he would make sure, go through the checklist, say they've supplied everything, they meet the criteria. At that time, he would bring that to the Economic Development Commission at scheduled meetings for this purpose. And he would present strictly that the businesses met that criteria that was requested. This is what they're looking, dollar-wise, how much they're looking for, and this is what they're looking to do with that money. Then the commission would vote yes or no, either on the whole dollar amount or a partial dollar amount. And if you can see in the back of the handout, we have the checklist, we have the affidavit, and then you can see from samples from Fairfield of what their meeting minutes look like. So you can see the dollar value, the businesses, the applications. So I attached an agenda and then meeting minutes from those meetings. So just so you guys understand, this is something that's been done before with HUD money for minority represented businesses in Fairfield. The director was very helpful in coming up and helping me with this program. They do a lot of federal grant work in Fairfield. So these are the applications in the programs that they use. So anytime they have to supply information back to the federal government with requests, this is the forms that they use. If you can see what they've done, so they had $300,000 originally for the program, or almost actually 381. And they break it down in, they had 88 applications received. They rejected 9, withdrew 9. And this was at the time. So this was July at that point. They committed $264,000 in funds, but you can see, so 19% came from the retail trade, 9% from the salons, 17% food service, 13% fitness, personal services was 11. So you can see how they broke it up. So it's by industry as well. Talking to them, they were pretty lenient or with the uses for the funds because they didn't want to pigeonhole anybody as long as it was helping their businesses. What they did say is when it came to the initial onslaught of grants they were a little cautious with the money because they were unsure of how many people would actually apply. Now they're going back to those original people that applied and said, hey, we didn't grant your full dollar value. We have excess funds that we didn't, as long as you still need them, they're here and taking reapplications on it. In this process, there is a look back at 3 months where basically Economic Development Commission would meet with the businesses, see how things are going, how the process worked for them, and what they use some of their funds for. It wasn't, they don't do an accounting and say, well, you only used so far $5,000 of the $6,000 you said. It's not for that purpose. It's for what have you done so far? How did the process work and where are we? They did allow for, if there were some businesses that already expended funds or had bills out there, they did allow that the town sent money directly to the vendors, but most of it was directly to the businesses. It was a grant directly written to the business. So he allowed both those options in Fairfield. So that was a lot. I'm open to questions.
Yeah, so I remember you saying that there were going to be requirements that we needed to prove what we did with the money. So do we have any idea what we're going to have to produce? Like, are we just going to be able to say we gave $100,000 to the Economic Development Commission for a small business? Or are we going to have to say 10,000 of it went to Red Onion and this is exactly what they did with it?
No.
Like,
So if the town was giving it to a third party, like Sector, just using them as an example, then the town would say we gave $100,000 to Sector to administer the program, and Sector is responsible for retaining all of the information. Because it's being administered by the town, we have to have every little detail and all of the information. So we're not going to be able to do direct payments to vendors. Everything has to be a spend it, get it. So I'm going to use Red Onion as my example. Red Onion would have to spend the money for new tables, give the town a receipt. We would reimburse Red Onion for those tables. There's a lot of stipulations as to what the money can be used for. So we would need, so one of my questions I have in here is, are we giving that a list of allowables out ahead of time that says these are the things you can use it for? Or are they submitting their application in and then it's being reviewed not just by EDC and by Nate, but also by the financial side of the town saying these uses are allowable or are not allowable? There's a window of time that ARPA funds have to be used. They have to be used by December 2024. So, will these applicants have until December of 2024 to spend the money, and therefore it's earmarked? And if they don't use it, then that money doesn't get used by anyone. I have a bunch of markups in there. So, I think there's a lot that needs to go into this. It's a great program. We just need to fine tune a lot of it because since it was adapted from a non-rescue plan funding source, there's a lot of different stipulations that we have to follow because of the ARPA funds and the guidance that we've gotten from the federal government.
So like I said, this is something that some of the details do need to be worked out throughout the process. And, it's an overview. So in all my research on some of the other grants that are going out through different programs, you could give a flat fee to a business. You could do that as a grant. So you're saying that they have to provide receipts for everything spent and it can't be used for a program.
What we have interpreted from the information we got from the Department of Treasury is that if the town is giving money, we are responsible for how that money is being used. So when we did the program for the grant for the Cultural Coalition, we have given that money to them. They are administering that project. But if we are giving it to independent businesses, then we can't buy them things because then technically it's town property. The town paid for it.
Well,
and
we're not buying it. We're giving that, it's a grant program.
Right.
So
but
can you send me that wording on it? And who interpreted it?
We did. The town did. So if you can show me something that says otherwise,
So we didn't get a ARPA expert in or any of these professionals to walk us through part of that process.
I don't know that there is an ARPA
Yeah,
expert.
if there is one, we should find them.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I can tell you that some of the consultants that, we're talking at the sector meeting, they are on top of it all. I'll reach back out to Fairfield because he does a lot of federal grants for their businesses to find out more on that.
I thought the COG was, we gave money to the COG so they could hire a opera fund expert. I'll have to check and see who did. I don't think I'm going to see them tomorrow, actually. I can ask them if they have got somebody on board. Because if
To
they
where?
did, the COG,
what's the cost?
the
Oh, Council of Governments.
Council of Governments,
Yeah.
right. So I have a meeting with them tomorrow morning, actually. So I'll ask them if they've hired that person, because if they did, I wouldn't mind having that person at the community conversation, since we've already paid money
Yeah.
towards it. So
So I know how much we wanted to keep it with EDC. I don't know if we have the resources to track. And I haven't been to the last couple of EDC meetings, so I don't know where we're at with new members and somebody willing to kind of take over the chair to the point that you did. I was, I had suggested in one of the EDC meetings in the past that I thought it was probably best to have sector manage it. And I know there's a fee that comes along with that. And nobody more than, well, you more than me, want to keep it with EDC because we worked really hard on that. We worked for the better part of, months on it. I just don't know if we're going to have the resources to track all of that. And the commitment from the current committee, whatever it looks like in the next couple of months to manage that. And then does Nate know that he's going to be the kind of keeper of they're going to come
Yep.
to him, he's going to look, so he's okay
Yeah,
with
we
that
talked
right
about it
now?
at the last meeting, or the last two meetings, but
I
yeah,
mean, those are just my feelings. I would love to have it not have so much red tape. This is what kind of drives me crazy. They're saying, here's all this money, do something good with it. What better thing to do than to give it to the businesses in our town? But then we have all this tracking that we have to do, and it's a barrier to getting it out there.
Well,
But
and I guess that's something that we need to look at as a town with even the money we've already committed, because from that, you bring up the community, or the
conversation.
cultural coalition, and they said whatever dollars weren't spent, that they would return back to the town. So what accounting are they doing, and how do they get away differently? Because they're a nonprofit.
We haven't given them any funding yet. They haven't given us the request that says these are the ways we're using the funds.
Right, so if they're giving it to an artist colony or an artist group, they're gonna have to provide receipts, and those will just go to
But
them and not. to
they're
the town.
responsible for holding on to that backup data.
so they'd
So
be
they're
on the
like a
hook for it.
subcontractor. So we don't have a subcontractor that's administering the program and
Right.
is responsible for holding the people that are getting the money to all the allowable uses. So basically by us subbing it to them, they're responsible. If we don't sub it to anyone, we're responsible. So we have to make sure that the money's not being used to buy something that's not allowable.
They have been having monthly, since we designated the money for them, they have been meeting monthly with town residents that fall under the artists. I was supposed to go to the last meeting, but we had a conflict. I couldn't go. We had another meeting. I think it was Board of Selectmen meeting that night. But anyway, so I guess the main thing is it's the accounting. So when you give the money to Cultural Coalition, the accounting falls on them. They just have to tell us what they're doing with it. But if there's any questions, if there was ever an audit, go back to them. If there's an audit on this and it comes back to us, then it's almost like an FOI ask, right? So you're asking us to have all the document. I think this is a wonderful program. It fits within the ARPA funding, exactly what we want to do, similar to the one with the hiring. Probably even more so than some of the things we've given money to.
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
But I think that as I look at the list of questions, it was 35 questions from Nate and 28. It was Susan and Christine sat down again with 28 questions. So 28 plus 35, so 63 questions. I guess, and
It would have been nice to get those questions.
I thought we sent them to you.
I did not receive any.
You
questions.
received it on Friday.
I don't have it in my,
It was with the packet.
it was in with the packet?
It was the separate document that was attached. It was a Word document. I had to send it that way because of the way markup mode works in Word. If
Oh, I
did-
had it as the application. So it was, I got this as a Word document.
And it should have had all this.
I did not, it was all not formatted, so I didn't see those questions separately.
It looked like that.
Yeah,
So
see, I didn't print it out.
It did come through. I mean, I'm obviously looking at it on my phone, but it did come through with, I think, the questions on top of the print.
Okay.
It was hard to see. Like I can show you.
Yeah, I
later.
thought it was just like
I thought it was
this
like.
document all messed
got
up on
messed
Word.
up.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think that those are the
Okay.
questions embedded in there, Brett,
Okay.
because when I was looking at it, it was really hard to see.
So my thought is, I approve of this in principle. I'd like to get the answers to those 63 questions. Again, some of them are probably right off the cuff. Maybe there's, 10 or 15 that really
Whose
have
color
some-
is what? is there-
Blue is Christine and Susan, and red, pink is. me,
Who's
I believe.
Susan? I'm still.
Our accounting generalist. So
Gotcha.
she and I
She's the one
sat
that
down
made-
together,
She
reviewed
gives you the
everything.
checks that you have to sign. She tells you, okay, the checks are ready to be
Oh,
signed.
yeah. that-
Okay.
all
And,
82.
and I have to say, like, some of these questions, I had a comment to Nate during our meeting. Nate is EDC staff. So some of these questions, he's going to be the ones that's going to have to answer it. So he's going to answer, how do we verify the number of police? He's going to have to figure those things out.
So on Nate, one question on Nate, 'cause you brought him up twice tonight. It's an 80-20 split, correct?
Yeah.
He's 20% EDC, 80% P and Z.
Yeah.
You've got him going door to door to stores and to companies and asking them about the first program. And now you got him pretty much administering this program. All EDC is doing is voting yes or no on each applicant. So he's doing the lion's share of work on this, and he's going door to door on the other project. Is that all going to work within his 8 hours a week? Because he works 40 hours a
Should.
week.
I mean, those numbers aren't set in stone.
No, but not.
Of what it's a flux. And that's honestly, that's why EDC asked for a helper last year and we got shot down.
Right, but you don't have a helper. I'm just saying is you're giving him a lot of tasks. I just want to make sure he can fit them into his daily schedule.
He should be able to. So business visitation is part of the job. But I'll go through and I'll go through those questions you had. I'll also reach out to Fairfield and get his take on it.
I mean, I would approve this tonight with the stipulation that approve pending answers to the 63 questions, as simple or tough as they may be. But my feeling is since we have about 2 months before we go to town meeting on this, because we're not going to have one until probably March. And we'll probably have 5 or 6 things on that town meeting. And we don't need to go to the Board of Finance tomorrow and ask them to appropriate because there's too many questions to ask the Board of Finance. So I would think that I would like to are you presenting this to as a selectman for the EDC or as a chairman of the Board of Selectmen?
I let you know, I'm presenting as EDC so I'll abstain from any vote that takes place. But I will tell you that when we talked about it at EDC, we talked about it as getting it moving forward with a March, hopefully, timeline, but that some of these details will need to be worked out. And that's how it works with any of these programs is we're trying to move the program forward. So the earmark for that money is in that wheelhouse. So it's coming down the line. That certain details are above EDC's qualifications to figure out some of whether it's the accounting or whether what forms that they have. Like I said, this was worked out from other federal monies and the basics of that. But the program in general is what we're looking to move forward. The details of what the town needs for documentation is nothing that EDC really has control over. We have control over what we're presenting to you guys as a program. The details, we don't have that expertise.
Yeah,
No.
I think that's kind of the exact reason why I'm suggesting that sector own it. I think it's a given, $100,000, absolutely. There is no better use of the ARPA funds than helping our small businesses. So in my mind, it's a given, but I understand it needs to go, like, we have to approve it, then it needs to go, because it's $100,000 appropriation, has to go to town meeting, right?
After it goes through Board of Finance.
Yeah, and there's no rush to get
So-
it to Board of Finance in the next few
Yeah.
weeks or
So
months.
So if it's not for the next few weeks, I'm sorry, you should go ahead. I just cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I say we have the community conversation talking about ARPA funding. What better example of that would be this? So why couldn't that be part of the discussion on the 8th?
Yeah, I mean, in a million years, I can't imagine anybody voting against giving $100,000 to our small businesses in town. Like, there's no better use of the money. It's just all of the questions and the running of the program that I get it, Brett, we worked on that together, but that's a lot for the town, for Nate to take on. And so let sector have it.
See, I disagree with you on that one, because I talked to two different towns, not just Fairfield, another town as well. And they both do this in-house, and they have a lot more dollars and a lot more businesses out there than we do. We don't have a ton of businesses here. In dealing with sector, their turnover, there's been a lot of turnover over the past few years, and I worry about that. So there are some new board members on EDC that are really, I can see that are going to be active. And Nate, once he gets comfortable in his role, I think these are some of those things that help him get out into the community. And that's why EDC voted on it last week to try to keep it in-house as we can. First of all, to expend extra money to an association or
I know, and
organization
that
just to
was
run it.
That was the big
is another
barrier.
thing.
I agree. So I guess from here, we just, we try and get some of the answers to the questions that people submitted and put it back on the agenda for next
Yeah, I don't,
meeting. Is that what we do?
so I'm not opposed to doing it in-house, providing we have our ducks in a row. Right now we have a EDC that's in flux. We don't know who the next chair is. We have people that aren't coming to meetings because they can't. We have new people that want to get on. I think that a snapshot of what I see there looks like there's a lot of potential in EDC. I think we've lost a lot of good people, but we've added some, especially when we get one of the older individuals back that used to be on, we get him back again.
Yeah.
But the new members that are on, I think, will be active. And I think once we get EDC back and we're comfortable with them, then I think that it makes more sense. I don't mind doing it in-house as long as we want to be this has to be totally above reproach. You can never say, well, why did that person get the money and who does he know and who does she know and did they deserve it? And you know how the questions start flying. So everything has to be airtight, by the book, T's crossed, I's dotted, and there can be no questions, and I would think
I
that.
agree. If we can feel comfortable about all of that, then I don't have a problem, but the last thing I want is the town being on the hook for something we can't produce and,
There's no one on EDC right now, you're not going to be on EDC shortly, but there's no one on EDC right now that has or is affiliated with a business that would fall into this, correct?
Sam too big.
Sam's not in town.
Oh, okay.
The only one
Would be Stefan.
Will Mason, but he's an independent, he's a contractor. but-
Because we have to make sure that we can address that if that happens.
Well, yeah, you would have to
You would have to abstain from.
from voting.
yeah.
So for instance, myself, even if I was still on EDC, I wouldn't apply for it just because I just wouldn't do it. But part of me thinks you shouldn't be penalized because you're on the committee. So
Yeah.
somebody like Will or anybody that might get on in the future, I would think they would abstain from any voting on this program. That's my take on it. what I'd say is I'd like to see this move forward at some point shortly, at least the money earmarked that way to go through the process and figure out some of these details. And then at the end, if it has to go through sector or somebody, then it does. But the program as a whole can still move through the process.
So what if we, on the 8th, we have the monies we have available, but we take a separate column with monies that is pending, that are pending, and this $100,000 in a pending column, pretty much by itself. So it's not part of the ARP discussion because the Board of Selectmen already wanted to move it to a pending state, you know what I'm saying? So if we have 1.2 million, now we only have 1.1 million because we took $100,000, moved it over to this column as a pending legislation. It's already 5 steps ahead of everyone else. It's going to be talked about that day probably. So that way the money isn't spent somewhere else. So someone doesn't come up with $1.2 million worth of other ways to spend the money because that takes the 100,000 away from this program. So if we move it over here and have a pending program, so we tell the people that day, yes, you got 1.1 million. You had 1.2, but 1.1 because we had a presentation to the Board of Selectmen from the EDC. It's in progress, and we've already kind of earmarked that monies. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I think that's fair and comfortable because this has been a work in progress. And I know Christine's going to have a lot to do with it. And if I do get some different information from Fairfield about COVID in this program, he's so great, like, and so helpful. He sent me the award letters and everything. It's probably beneficial for me to have you reach out to him to go over, okay, and maybe he puts you in touch with whoever does the finance for them on that. And then maybe then we determine, okay, at the selectman level, that can't be done in-house. We need to move it somewhere else. But I think the program is really what EDC wanted to get out there, and those dollars at least talked about and like you said, somewhat earmarked.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that at the meeting if it makes sense to the two of you to maybe not vote to approve it, but vote to put it into a separate category on that date. So it's earmarked because it's pending litigation by us.
If that's allowed, and
We're making up
again,
we're making up the rules. It's our community conversation. So,
I mean, eventually the 100,000 has to go to, like you said, Board of Finance and then to a town meeting. I have no problem taking 100 out and putting it in a side over here, not a, and only giving the community conversation what we have left to work with.
when you go to the bank and they tell you how much money you have to spend, and then there's this, I thought I had 100 more than that, but that's because they've already earmarked it over there. Like it's a pending.
A bill.
Well, I guess it's similar to when you had in the last administration, that somewhat budget that you guys talked about of what was going for different topics under the rescue funds. It's the same thing. You're just saying, hey, this is over here. It's not approved, but this is the programs we're working on.
I think we could do that. And that way we know the money's not going to be earmarked for something else. Now there's nothing left in the pot for this program. This program is a good program. It should go through. It's what the money was meant for, these type of things. So.
Yeah. And I plan on stepping off EDC now that, I was trying to work through this program and get them up to speed. But even as a selectman, I can still work with whoever takes over in the next month, actually, is when they push the election to.
All right. So does anyone want to make a motion to?
Well, I'm going to.
Not so much approve, but earmark this money?
Yeah, I absolutely make a motion to earmark $100,000 of the ARPA funds to this project and move it forward in the future to a town meeting.
So it's not included in the money that
Correct.
we're showing as available to
Correct.
at the
Yeah,
community
not,
conversation.
yes, just to earmark it for not to approve tonight.
All right, and I would second that motion, and with Brett abstaining, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain,
Aye.
one abstention. Okay, thank you. That makes sense. Okay. Next, 298 expenditures. What we did here is Christine put together it's a pie chart
Yeah.
on one side. And it's a black and white pie chart, but it's light, medium, and dark. And it's a bunch of numbers on the other side. So basically, this is what we've spent to date. I know people have asked for this. I'll tell you, when we did a walkthrough today, myself, Christine, and Carl Johnson, and because he's so knowledgeable in these areas, it just opened our eyes to a lot of things that we can do and we can't do, as far as you just can't just shut everything down and walk away, because there's too many tentacles that there's fire suppression situations, and there's a lot to it. So you just can't shut a building down. You could lower the temp on some cases. We went into one room and it was all the way up, it was like 100 degrees in there, but we did lower that thermostat. But in general, it's an ongoing situation with monies being spent, and that's why something like this community conversation is going to be a great thing to get the taxpayers to say to us, hey, this is what we have, this is what we want to do. And whether I agree with their decision or not, it doesn't really matter. It's what the town decides. And we'll go from there. But
So I'm
any
seeing-
questions on this
38,000 and change.
to date? Since,
From July, is that from July 1?
because we haven't had the winter yet, which
Right.
makes things.
So
Winter's
this,
coming.
this doesn't reflect all, so, it's not the, for example, it's not the electric bills to date. It's what we've been
Mhm.
invoiced by Eversource to date. So
And
it probably goes back about a month.
And it doesn't include any monies from the Board of Ed on what the portion they're paying for. It's just strictly what's owed so far, or we've paid a lot of this already. But so things we're not doing this year that happened last year, which will keep the bill down a bit, as we were doing a lot of dressing up, painting and sprucing up because of possible rental. We haven't done that since we decided that this building now is in limbo until the town decides what to do. We're not putting any money into it. We're not turning the heat up. We're not cleaning it. We're not painting it. So that's keeping the bills down a little bit.
Okay, I do have some questions.
Yep.
So, and I noticed it when I was signing checks. So anything that the school had a contract for, now that we took over the building, do those contracts follow, or do we get to renegotiate?
We have kept all the contracts in place as they stand because we don't know what we're doing with the building. So
Okay.
to try to renegotiate or enter into a new contract really isn't advisable when you don't know the term. The MCOR New England Mechanical contract was one the town put in place for quarterly maintenance on the
Okay.
HVAC system. The Griggs and Brown was something that we were asked to put in place by the Board of Ed. They had pest control and they stopped it because they weren't paying for the building anymore and the pests came back.
Oh.
So
One that jumps out at me is because I've had history with Kone as the elevator company. We actually threw them out of Holly Green because we found some fraudulent charges, some things that they said were wrong that weren't wrong. And they were about double the cost of some
To-
other places.
to date, it's just been the regular maintenance. You had mentioned to me a few months ago about a different contractor and you
Yeah.
hadn't sent the information. to me.
I introduced to Donnie, but.
You got to send it to me.
So do you know what, like these contracts, when they're up and,
This
you
is
know.
an old contract that's, I want to say, in service since the 90s.
okay.
So we're just continuing it until we figure out what's happening with the building. But if we decide after January 8th that we're continuing with the building, we can look into new contracts.
All right, because I know those, so they go through the self-renew process, even though they were with another company and they don't always provide the services in that original contract, so you can get out of them. But do we need to maintain that elevator
Yes.
for safety inspections, even though we're not using it?
Yes, because if we stopped keeping it this was something we talked about with Carl today, that if we didn't keep the maintenance up to date on it, and then we had to restart the elevator and restart the service, then it could be subject to new codes. It might cost a lot more to get it restarted. The amount we're paying is minimal for what we could foresee in the future if we stopped.
Okay, yeah, that, I can tell you the $822 is a lot for a 1, 2-story or even 3-story elevator. But those are things I look at when I sign the checks and say, hey, when is this contract up? Do we put those out to bid every year? Or when they're up, to look at those. I don't know the process, what you guys do on that
As
stuff.
Carl said, though, if you let it run out, that opens up another can of worms, because now you're grandfathered in, and you gotta bring everything up to. that
No, I'm not saying let it run out. I'm saying as that contract renewal date is up, what was our process in the past? Do we look at those contracts or numbers, or is that something Donnie handles because it's maintenance?
Well, for this building, we're just riding everything out. So
I'm sure there was something that, what's his name? The guy just up, was his name?
Joe?
Joe, no, not Joe, the guy from the school.
Oh, I'm the school guy was
Guy,
taking care of
I'm
all
sure
that,
He was the
but
one doing it, but.
Okay.
But yeah, I agree with you, Brett. Once we decide what we're doing, if that part of the building staying with the elevator, we should renegotiate all these contracts. So,
yeah, and the M4 contracts are things that we just put in place when we opened the Center for Emergency Services. We signed on with them, so we just added on for them for this building. It's the vendor that the town uses.
So the gas, Eversource gas, that's just for our heat in here? Okay. And then do we ever get a report from what that solar is producing and how much that's
Mhm.
saving us or not saving? us?
So there is a spreadsheet that the town created. I actually asked Ivana to start working on it today to update it. So it tracks what we're paying, because you have to combine what we're paying Eversource directly and then what we're paying Clean Focus Development for the solar. It does on all the Clean Focus Development invoices, which are attached to the checks that you guys sign. It does have what the usage is and what the cost is. So we are tracking it, but the savings are over 20 years. So it's not like you're going to see drastic savings
Right.
on a month to month.
Because I know the
basis.
presentation, the Board of Ed, that they weren't saving money. It was actually costing them a little more. So I didn't know if we have that same kind of.
We have a
breakdown.
spreadsheet.
well, the answer I got was costing them more now, but it would flip flop eventually, and then the savings get bigger as they go, but we have not seen them yet.
And I guess as we talk about, that's probably something do we need to bring up at the community conversation? Because those are on certain parts of this building, right? Or the roof?
It's only on the part that the roof was redone on this building. So
Which is above where we are right now, though, correct?
yeah, it's above the superintendent's office and such. So nothing that would be discussed to be demolished unless we were getting rid of the whole.
If we
building.
demolish the whole thing, but those costs weren't in there about what our repay was gonna be.
I don't understand the question. What?
So in that presentation of where it showed the whole, if we demolish the whole thing, what the cost would be, it didn't account for what we'd have to repay the state for solar. I mean, for the roof.
No,
Okay.
Also, if we demolish the whole thing, we probably have some sort of monies to get back because of the
Square footage.
no, because we got the reimbursement for the roof. And and
Right.
that's a 10-year thing. So if we had it for 4 years, we'd probably have to pay back 6 years of reimbursement, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. Staff discussions. You want to take that? I'll do the appointments if you want to do staff. discussion.
So we have a staffing change. Our assistant foreman for the highway department has found a new job. His last day officially is this Friday. So we just wanted to make mention to you that we do have that change. The job is posted. It's supposed to close on Friday. We post on all of our jobs on Indeed, and then we also post them on the town website. For past vacancies, we have had a member of the Board of Selectmen sit on the hiring committee. So we wanted to see if one of you was interested when we start the interviews for that position, if one of you wanted to be on that panel.
I nominate Brett Master. Now, Brett, would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, I'd do it.
Okay.
So do we-
Nicole, would you want to do it?
When
no.
do you anticipate the interviews?
I don't know yet. It closes Friday.
Usually they're during the day and we only
I'm
need
fine.
one. And I think that we asked you to leave work a number of times already, so I
Yeah.
just figured
I'm
Brett would
fine.
do it, so.
And we'll have other vacancies.
Do we post those in-house first and then out or no?
So that particular job is part of the AFSMI union. So it is part of the town hall union since they supervise people in the steelworkers union. So it has to be outside of their union because you don't supervise within your own union. So
Okay.
it has been posted internally to the AFSMI union members, none of which have a CDL class A
Cecile doesn't want
license.
it?
So we did post in-house and we did also let the public works employees know, but they're technically part of the regular pool because
Right.
it's not it wouldn't be a lateral in the union.
Okay, and then one other question, just for process. When these positions come up, do we ever review them to see if it's something that we need to rehire for and not?
I'm sure we could do that in this particular case, seeing that we have a foreman that's gonna probably retire in 2 years. And you would hope that when you're thinking about this assistant foreman, that you're almost looking ahead to and say, can this guy be an assistant foreman today and also be the foreman 2 years from now or 3 years from now? That's the way I like to do it. Anytime we replace somebody, is this the successor to the person that's above them? So in this particular case, I think we probably do, because there's been so many times, like with Donnie's out with COVID. Donnie was out with a knee injury, knee surgery. So you need that guy that's going to jump in and take over. And he has to be respected by his peers. Say, okay, he's the assistant. He's not just one of the crew. He's this guy already has a title a little bit above us, being the assistant, so he can jump in and take over. So I agree with you, Brett. Whenever this comes up, and this is going to come up in the next 2 years, probably in other parts of both the highway department and town hall. And I think we should look at those things. It makes sense, especially now when there's going to be so much transition going on. But in this particular case, I would have hard pressed for someone to convince me that we didn't need this position. But
And that's why I asked, because going through the budget season so many times with EDC or whoever, and sitting on board of finance, when we talk about our expenses and, employees are the biggest chunk between municipal and Board of Ed. And they always say, well, do you need all those positions you have there? How do you justify those positions? So as one comes up, it was presented to the Board of Ed that they should look at those positions and whether they rehire, or is that through attrition that you don't need that position any longer. So I just want to know the process, not saying that this is one we don't need. I'm just saying, is that something that we're going to do going forward
I
when
mean, I
something
agree.
comes
I
up?
think that we need to look at everything in that way. During budget season, we can say, yes, that absolutely was reviewed. And we heard the presentation by whoever, and yes, we decided it was needed. But yeah, I agree. I think that we need to review them as they come up.
is there any, is there a legal side to it when it comes to unions? If we just eliminate a position, we're fine, right?
If you choose to not fill a vacant role, then you're fine. If you start changing job descriptions, changing job titles, combining things, that's when you run into issues. I would ask from the administrative side, if we have a vacancy that needs to be discussed, I would ask that we call special meetings to get it expedited as quickly as possible.
So we can get
Because
it posted.
we do not have a bench at all in town hall. So if anyone were to leave, there is not a second person that does that job. So we will need to decide very quickly what the plan is.
Actually, on that topic, it's kind of off topic for tonight, but when we talk about that, think we should be building a bench. I know it costs a bit of money, but we saw what happened when we lost the tax collector. We see what happens when we lose key individuals, and the tax collector is a part-time position. I'm in favor of bringing a part-time assistant tax collector, someone that can be training to be the tax collector if something happens to the tax collector. And also give it that way, the tax collector can be there more hours, because now we have two people filling the role. And if they're both part-time, you're not paying the medical and the expenses of a full-time person. So things like that, I think we will need to talk about coming down. I'm not discussing it tonight, it's not on the agenda, but things like that, I think we need to look at and say, how do we build a bench? Because we don't want to be left high and dry when some of these people leave. And then sometimes you hire and you're taking a weaker person that you wanted to, but there's only 3 applicants and you're kind of stuck. So if you could get somebody in a training position and help the town at the same time, it would make sense. So anyway, okay. Any other discussion on this topic? Okay, so Brett, you will work on that hiring committee.
Just Christine, let me know what I need. Can you forward me the job description as well?
It's on the website, but yes.
I have a copy in my drawer if you need it, if you want to make a copy. Next time you visit me, I'll give you a copy if you want it. All right, appointments. So we have 2 appointments this evening.
2 excellent. appointments,
2,
I
they're
have to
both
say.
for the Parks and Recreation. People that have I don't know, did Heath go to the last meeting? Okay, so they've been both of the meetings. I think they both bring a lot to the table, if you look at their backgrounds. That particular committee works well when everyone gets along well and they're all pulling the rope in the same way. And I think these two people would add, especially with the experience they have. So my recommendation is to appoint these two people. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Michael Stock and Keith Dugas to the Recreation Committee.
A second. Or
Or you can just so move it.
so moved.
Okay. So any discussion?
I just want to say that I know both of these individuals, they'll be great additions to the rec. And actually, I met them both through a rec program when we had adult volleyball, like pickup games on Tuesday or Wednesday. One of those probably 10 years ago. And what was nice is it did draw other people from other towns in that played those sports. And now Heath moved to town. He was actually in Westerly then, but
What years were that? What year were those? 2007, 2008?
probably.
Because I remember you had like Wilson tattooed on your
I
head.
did,
for a while,
I
where you-
did. I broke my nose. But I have to say, as we talk about this, it was funny because I'm going there and I haven't played since like a pickup game since high school. And some of these guys take it pretty serious. And I walk around, I remember saying, guys, this is rec. This isn't professional volleyball. But I going back on this, I think they'll work well with the existing committee. And I mean, Christine works with the rec department a lot. I think more hands helping in that program will just help not only expand rec, but also draw more residents in to do more things.
I loved Michael's comment. I'd like to get involved with the town with something that's not political. He's thinking that Parks and Recs won't be political. I love it. I like it's a given.
Okay,
They're both great.
For the minutes, who was the motion and who was the second?
so I motioned it and Brett seconded it.
Thank you. She'll need that.
So, okay, just because of honor, that way.
Because I wasn't clear. So if I wasn't clear, she's not going to be.
Okay, so the motion on the floor we've discussed. Why don't we take it to a vote? All in favor of appointing Keith Dugas and Michael Stock to the Recreation Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 3-0. Down to the minutes.
But there's another commission.
You have more appointments. So we have 4 vacancies currently. Well, we have 4 renewals required for the cemetery commission. So we have 3 that you guys are going to reappoint today. It's an email from me that's in the packet. So it should be reappointing Jeffrey Barnes, David Feedy, and Mike Dibble. Their terms and Dave Feedy expired May 23rd, 2021. Jeffrey Barnes expired February 4th, 2020, and Mike Dibble expired May 23rd, 2019. So this will have 1 potential vacancy on the cemetery commission. You can have no more than 9 members, which is what they have normally. So this is a 6-year, I think it's a 6-year term, 5 or 6-year term by statute.
So I make a motion to reappoint the slate as Christine presented.
A second.
Perfect. Any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Okay, 3-0. You know, when you do this 2-sided sheet, I don't see them sometimes.
I didn't print it, Ivana did.
know.
I agree. I looked for the budget schedule like 4 times. I looked through the packet. I'm like, where is
We're
it?
saving trees.
It's good.
All right, so now we're to the minutes. Nicole, would you like to lead us in the,
Absolutely.
Minutes,
So I would like to make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen meeting of November 23rd, 2021 at 6 PM. I make a motion to approve those minutes as written.
second that motion? Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay, no discussion. All those who approve the minutes of November 23rd, 2021 as submitted by Ivana, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next. Should have 4 sets.
So the next set is the Board of Selectmen special meeting on November 30th, 2021 at 6:30. I make a motion to approve those minutes as written.
Second that. Any discussion? If no discussion, then all in favor of approving the Board of Selectmen special meeting minutes from November 30th, 2021, said aye.
Aye.
Okay, 3-0. Next,
I make a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen special meeting on December 6th, 2021 at 2 PM as written.
I'll second that motion. Especially since I submitted these. So are there any discussion? This was the tour that we did up at the Public Works Garage. There's no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And lastly, I make a motion to approve as written, the Board of Selectmen special meeting of December 6th, 2021 at 5 PM.
Okay, I second them. Oh, Brett seconds
I
that
wanted to
motion.
beat you to one of them.
I'm glad you did. Okay, Brett, second the motion. Are there any discussion? If none, then look for a motion. I'll look for a vote. All in favor of approving the capital improvement Board of Selectmen special meeting, December 6th at 5 PM, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. And we have public comment. Is there any public comment online, Christine?
If you have a comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none.
Okay, hold on one second. So no, this next meeting was a special meeting we're going to put in if we needed to vote on the business plan. If you want to pull that out, Brett, if you feel we don't need that meeting on January 4th, we've already earmarked it for consideration under the ARPA fund committee conversation. So that was the only reason we're going to have this meeting. So if we don't need it, we don't need it.
Yeah, I don't think we do. We
Okay,
can do it after that.
so if nothing comes up, we will just cancel that meeting,
The January 4th. one.
January 4th. Okay, can I get a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Staff, are you still awake out there?
She's been here since 4 o'clock, so, all right, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
It is 8:10 for the minutes.
Christine, I was gonna say, it's,
Sorry.
Yvonne, if you're still listening, it's 8:12. Thank you.
Everybody's still awake out there.